The wind cut through her jacket like it knew she couldn't afford another one. She stood under the flickering light outside the 24-hour market, staring down at the inside of her wallet. No hidden bills tucked behind receipts. No emergency card she forgot about. Just a thin photograph of her children and 4 wrinkled $5 bills folded so many times the edges were soft. Inside her apartment, 2 small bodies were asleep on a mattress pushed against the wall. Her daughter had asked for cereal before bed. Her son had pretended he wasn't hungry. She had smiled. Promised breakfast would be better. The door of the market slid open behind her. Warm air spilled out. So did noise. So did the smell of cheap coffee and rotisserie chicken turning under yellow lights. She could walk inside right now and stretch that 20 into milk, bread, and something filling enough to quiet morning questions. She didn't move. Across the sidewalk, half hidden in shadow near the brick wall, a man sat hunched over. Shoulders folded inward. Head down. Jacket too thin for the temperature. His hands were bare, red at the knuckles. He wasn't asking for money. Wasn't holding a sign. Just sitting there like he had run out of options and decided not to fight anymore. She looked away. Then looked back. Something about the way he was still bothered her. Not restless. Not scanning people. Just waiting. She told herself to go inside. Her children came first. Always. That was the rule. That had to be the rule. But her feet carried her across the sidewalk anyway. "Sir," she said softly. No response. She stepped closer. "Have you eaten?" The man lifted his head slowly. His face was shadowed by the streetlight behind him. Sharp lines. Clean jaw. Not the scruffy, lost look she expected. His eyes found hers immediately. They were clear. Too clear. For a second, she felt something shift in the air between them. Not gratitude. Not desperation. Something observant. Something assessing. She swallowed and forced herself not to step back. He didn't speak. Just watched her. Her fingers tightened around the 4 5s in her hand. $20. Bus fare for the week. Half of the electric bill. School lunch money. She crouched anyway. The concrete was cold through her jeans. She held the money out toward him. "It's not much," she said, voice steady even though her stomach twisted. "But it'll get you something warm." He didn't take it right away. His gaze dropped briefly to the bills. Then back to her face. "You don't have much," he said quietly. His voice wasn't weak. It wasn't shaking. It was calm. Controlled. She forced a small smile. "Enough." That wasn't true. He reached forward finally. His fingers closed around the money and her wrist. Not tight enough to hurt. Just long enough to stop her from pulling back. Her breath caught. His thumb rested against her pulse. Feeling it. Measuring it. His eyes held hers fully now. Not dull. Not broken. Intelligent. Sharp. Almost curious. "Why?" he asked. The question landed heavier than it should have. She could have lied. Could have said because it's Christmas. Because it's cold. Because she felt sorry for him. Instead she said, because someone should. His grip lingered 1 second too long. Then he released her. She stood slowly, brushing off her knees, heart beating harder than it should have. For a strange moment she felt exposed. Like she had revealed something important without realizing it. She turned and walked back toward the store. Didn't look over her shoulder. Didn't see the subtle shift in the man's posture once she left. Didn't see his back straighten. Didn't see his expression change from weary to alert. Didn't see the black SUV idling across the street. Tinted windows. Engine running. Inside, a driver watched everything. Watched the single mother kneel. Watched her hand over her last $20. Watched the man against the wall rise slowly to his feet once she disappeared inside. The back door of the SUV opened without hurry. The homeless man crossed the sidewalk with steady steps now. No shiver. No weakness. The rear door closed behind him with a soft, expensive click. The vehicle pulled away from the curb smoothly. Inside, The man unfolded the 4 5s carefully, studied the creases. The where? She gave all of it, the driver asked in Korean. Was. Yes. The man looked out the tinted window toward the market entrance, toward the woman still inside under fluorescent lights, counting coins at the register. His jaw tightened slightly. Find out who she is. The SUV disappeared into traffic. Inside the store, she paid for a single loaf of discounted bread with coins she scraped from her pocket. She walked home under the same cold wind, telling herself she had done the right thing. She did not know her name had already been spoken inside a moving vehicle. She did not know someone with power was now curious. She did not know the man she helped was not homeless at all. And she definitely did not know that a black SUV had been watching the entire time. Why was a black SUV watching a homeless man? Morning came without mercy. The radiator hissed but didn't warm the apartment. She stood at the kitchen counter staring at an overdue notice taped beside the sink. Final warning. Rent past due. Electricity pending disconnection. She folded the paper carefully so the kids wouldn't see it when they came in for breakfast. There was no cereal. Just toast cut into smaller pieces to make it look like more. Her daughter didn't complain. Her son asked if she could come to school for career day next week. She smiled and said she would try. She already knew she couldn't take time off. When the door closed behind them, the apartment felt louder in its silence. She opened her wallet again out of habit. No emergency miracle had appeared overnight. The 20 was gone. The choice was made. Across the city, sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking a skyline she had only ever seen in postcards. The same man who had leaned against a brick wall hours earlier now stood barefoot on polished marble. No tremble. No weakness. A tailored shirt lay draped over a chair. A watch worth more than her yearly rent rested on the counter. Jean Ho Park adjusted his cufflinks slowly while a man in a dark suit stood near the doorway waiting. "You're certain?" the lieutenant asked quietly. Jean Ho did not look at him. She gave everything she had. The lieutenant hesitated. People don't do that without motive. Jean Ho's eyes shifted toward the skyline. Exactly. He walked to a long table where surveillance photos were already spread out. Grainy images from across the street. Her kneeling. Her handing over the money. Her walking away. "Name," Jean Ho said. Within minutes a tablet was placed in front of him. Maya Johnson. 32. 2 children. Divorced. 2 jobs. 3 months behind on rent. Electricity notice issued. Medical debt for pediatric asthma treatment. No criminal record. No known gang ties. No political connections. The lieutenant continued reading. Ex-husband recently filed preliminary custody inquiry. No legal representation yet. She cannot afford one. Jean Ho's expression did not change, but his fingers stopped moving. Custody. Yes, he has private counsel. Funding source unclear. Jean Ho sat down slowly. Dig deeper. Files expanded across the screen. Employment history. Pay stubs. Landlord complaints. School records. Photographs of her walking her children to school. Of her leaving work late at night. Of her counting coins at a gas station. The lieutenant glanced up. She is fragile. Jean Ho corrected him. She is exposed. There was a difference. Fragile breaks. Exposed can be used. Or protected. He leaned back in his chair, replaying the moment her wrist had been in his hand. Her pulse steady despite fear. The way she didn't ask his name. Didn't demand repayment. Didn't even look back. No one intervened, he asked. No. She is invisible to the city. Jean Ho gave a faint, humorless smile. Not anymore. The lieutenant shifted uneasily. What are your intentions? Jean Ho stood and walked toward the window. Far below, traffic moved like controlled chaos. I do not believe in coincidence, he said calmly. A woman who has nothing does not give away her last $20 without reason. Perhaps she is simply kind. Jean Ho's gaze hardened slightly. Kindness is rarely simple. He turned back to the table. Her landlord. Behind on property taxes. Pay them. Quietly. Her electric bill. Handled. Her son's prescription. Covered through third-party insurance channel. The lieutenant hesitated again. You are inserting yourself into her life. Jin-ho's tone cooled. I am repaying a debt. But even he knew that was not entirely true. Debt implies balance. This felt different. This felt like something he did not fully control. And the custody filing? The lieutenant asked carefully. Jin-ho paused. Find the funding source. Moments later, new data surfaced. The ex-husband's lawyer had indirect ties to a business front connected to one of Jin-ho's rival syndicates. The room grew quieter. Interesting, Jin-ho murmured. She may already be inside a game she doesn't know exists. The lieutenant met his eyes. Do you believe she was chosen deliberately? Jin-ho thought of the black SUV parked across from the store. Of the way his rivals tested him constantly. Of the whispers that he had grown soft. If they are testing me, he said slowly, they will learn the cost. He picked up the folded 4/5s from the table where he had placed them earlier. The bills looked smaller in this room. Almost fragile. He smoothed them flat with deliberate care. From this moment forward, he said quietly, no harm touches her. The lieutenant nodded once. Orders would ripple through the city before noon. Repairs would be made. Debts would vanish. Barriers would be removed. She would wake tomorrow believing luck had shifted in her favor. But protection from a man like Jin-ho Park was never neutral. It marked territory. Drew attention. It signaled attachment. An attachment was weakness. Jin-ho slipped the $20 into his jacket pocket instead of returning it to the table. Monitor her, he added. Discreetly. The lieutenant paused at the door. Are you grateful, he asked carefully, or calculating? Jin-ho's reflection stared back at him from the glass. For the first time in years, he did not immediately know the answer. The first sign was the electricity. She came home expecting darkness. Expecting the hum of the refrigerator to be gone. Instead the lights flicked on instantly. No warning notice on the door. No red tag. She stood in the hallway staring at the bulb overhead like it might confess something. On the kitchen counter the overdue bill was gone. Not paid. She checked the mailbox twice. Nothing. The next morning her landlord knocked. That alone was unusual. He never knocked unless he wanted money. But today he smiled. Actually smiled. We're updating the building, he said, avoiding her eyes. New locks. Repairs. Fresh paint in the hallway. She blinked at him. What about the rent? He waved a dismissive hand. We'll work something out. He left before she could ask how. By afternoon her car, which hadn't started in weeks, roared to life as if it had never failed. She stood in the parking lot holding the steering wheel, confused. The mechanic down the street shrugged when she confronted him. Already paid for. By who? He shook his head. Cash. Good cash. Told me not to give a name. Her stomach tightened. Luck doesn't arrive in installments. It arrives in traps. That night she lay awake replaying the past 48 hours. The man against the wall. The way he held her wrist. The black SUV she had barely noticed when she left the store. Her chest felt tight. Someone had entered her life without knocking. Someone with reach. The next evening she didn't go home after work. She drove downtown instead. Parked in front of a sleek restaurant she had only ever passed on the bus. Frosted glass. Valet parking. Men in suits who did not look like they needed to raise their voices to be heard. She stepped inside without waiting to be greeted. The host began to speak but stopped when she said his name. Tell Jin-ho Park that Maya Johnson is here. Silence rippled across the room like a dropped glass. Conversations thinned. A waiter disappeared through a back door. 5 minutes later he emerged. No torn jacket. No tremble. No hunger in his posture. Tailored suit. Clean cuffs. expression smooth as polished stone. He looked exactly as powerful as she had feared. He approached without hurry. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. She folded her arms to keep them from shaking. "You shouldn't be fixing my life." His eyes studied her face carefully. "I told you," he replied. "You helped me. I help you. I didn't ask for help. You didn't have to." The calm in his voice irritated her more than anger would have. "You don't get to decide that," she snapped. A few heads turned. He did not flinch. "Your electricity would have been cut. Your landlord was preparing eviction paperwork. Your car was unsafe. I corrected problems." "Corrected?" She stepped closer. "You invaded." Something flickered in his gaze then. Not apology. Not quite pride either. "I repaid a debt." $20 isn't a debt," she said. "It was a choice." He tilted his head slightly. "And so was mine." She exhaled slowly, trying to steady herself. The room felt smaller. Controlled. Every exit monitored. "Stop," she said firmly. "I don't want this." His jaw tightened just enough for her to notice. "You don't want stability. Not like this." Pause stretched between them. She felt watched from every corner. "Nothing around powerful men is random," she added quietly. "And you are not random." For the first time he gave a faint smile. "You are observant. I am cautious." He nodded once. "Good." The exchange might have ended there. Might have stayed contained in that polished room. But as she turned to leave, her phone vibrated in her hand. Unknown number. She answered automatically. Her ex-husband's voice slid through the speaker like oil. "You should have taken my offer," he said. "My lawyer just filed emergency custody." Court date moved up. Her pulse spiked. "You can't afford that," she shot back instinctively. He laughed. "Funny thing about friends. They show up when needed." The line went dead. She stood frozen in the restaurant entryway. Jean Ho watched her carefully. "What happened?" he asked. She met his eyes slowly. "Emergency custody filing. Suddenly funded." Silence settled heavy between them. He did not look surprised. That terrified her more than anything. "Coincidence," she whispered. His expression hardened, subtle but undeniable. "No," he said evenly. "Nothing around powerful men is random." Her breath hitched. The room no longer felt elegant. Felt strategic. "Did helping you make me visible?" she asked quietly. He did not answer immediately. That hesitation told her enough. Somewhere beyond the walls of the restaurant, decisions were being made. Moves were being tested. And she had stepped into something far larger than unpaid bills. Did helping him make her visible to his enemies? The parking lot was almost empty when she finished her shift. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a pale, unforgiving glow. She kept her head down, keys threaded between her fingers the way women learn to do without being taught. The custody filing replayed in her mind. Emergency hearing. Fast track. Funded. Nothing about it felt accidental anymore. She reached her car and exhaled, thinking she'd made it to the small safety of metal and glass. "We need to talk." The voice came from behind her. She froze before she turned. Her ex stood a few feet away, hands in his jacket pockets, expression relaxed in a way that made her stomach tighten. Two men flanked him. One she recognized vaguely from years ago. The other she didn't know at all. "This isn't the place," she said evenly. "It is now." He stepped closer. Too close. "You should have taken the deal," he continued. "You keep the girl. Take the boy. Clean. You don't get to split children like furniture." Her voice didn't shake. She refused to let it. He smiled thinly. "Courts don't care about emotion. They care about stability. You don't have any." One of the men shifted, blocking the driver's side door. The other leaned against the hood casually, trapping her between them and the empty parking lot. "Move," she said. No one moved. Her ex reached for her wrist, gripping it the way he used to when doors were closed and apologies came later. "You always did things the hard way," he murmured. Headlights cut across the pavement suddenly. Low. Controlled. A black sedan rolled into the lot without hurry. Didn't screech. Didn't accelerate aggressively. It simply arrived and stopped at an angle that boxed in the scene. The engine stayed running. The rear door opened first. 2 men stepped out. Not large. Not loud. Just precise. The kind of stillness that signals confidence instead of chaos. Her ex released her wrist immediately, eyes flicking toward the car. The second rear door opened. Jin-Ho Park stepped out last. No raised voice. No visible weapon. Just presence. He walked forward at an even pace, stopping a few feet away. "Is there a problem?" he asked calmly. Her ex tried to laugh. Came out wrong. "This doesn't concern you." Jin-Ho didn't look at him yet. He looked at her. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head once. He finally shifted his gaze to the 3 men. The air changed. No shouting. No threats screamed across asphalt. Just silence heavy enough to feel. One of Jin-Ho's men stepped behind her ex without touching him. The positioning alone made it clear escape would not be simple. "Custody is a legal matter," her ex said, attempting confidence. "You don't get to interfere." Jin-Ho's voice remained level. "You filed an emergency motion today." Her ex blinked. "How do you? You accepted funding from a firm tied to my competitors." The words landed softly but precisely. Her ex's posture faltered almost imperceptibly. "You're out of your depth," Jin-Ho continued. "Withdraw the motion." "Or what?" The question was forced bravado. Jin-Ho stepped closer, not enough to invade, just enough to lower his voice. She couldn't hear the words he whispered. She only saw the effect. Color drained from her ex's face. His jaw tightened. His eyes flicked toward the 2 men behind him and found no reassurance there. The whisper lasted no more than 5 seconds. Then Jin-Ho stepped back. The message delivered. "You have until morning," Jin-Ho said quietly. "After that, the consequences expand." No one drew a weapon. No one threw a punch. But power shifted so visibly it was almost physical. Her ex swallowed hard. "This isn't over," he muttered, but the fight had drained from his voice. He signaled to the other 2. They retreated quickly. Car doors slammed. Tires squealed. The lot fell silent again except for the low hum of the black sedan's engine. She turned slowly to Jin-Ho. "What did you say to him?" she asked. He studied her carefully. "Enough." That answer unsettled her more than details would have. "You can't solve everything like this." His expression didn't change. "I solved it." The next morning her phone buzzed before she left for work. Notification from the court system. Emergency motion withdrawn. No hearing scheduled. No explanation. Just gone. Relief surged through her chest, followed immediately by something heavier. She drove to the restaurant again that evening without planning to. He was waiting in a private room this time. "It's handled," he said before she spoke. "You threatened him. I protected you." She crossed her arms. "I didn't agree to that." He held her gaze steadily. Agreement was not required. The statement hung between them, sharp and unyielding. "Protection is ownership in disguise," she said quietly. Something in his expression shifted, subtle but real. "You and your children are under my protection now," he replied. Final. Declarative. Not a question. Not a request. A decision. Her pulse quickened. "That's not how this works. It is in my world." She felt the invisible walls closing in again. Safety bought with control. Stability tied to power she did not own. He had removed the custody threat. But he had also marked her. Publicly. Strategically. Irreversibly. She didn't say thank you. She didn't say yes. She simply stood there understanding something had changed in ways she could not undo. What does his protection cost? The shift began quietly. Too quietly. Businesses tied to Jean Ho's network started facing unexpected inspections. Deliveries delayed. Counts flagged. Nothing dramatic. Nothing explosive. Just pressure. Strategic pressure. In his world, pressure meant observation. And observation meant someone was testing the perimeter. Jean Ho stood in his office staring at a screen filled with financial movement patterns. His lieutenant spoke carefully. "They're probing." Jean Ho didn't respond immediately. He already knew who. Rival syndicate. Patient. Intelligent. They never attacked directly without confirming weakness first. "The custody filing," the lieutenant added. "The funding source traces back to them." Silence thickened. Jean Ho's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "So it wasn't about her," the lieutenant continued. "It was about you." Jean Ho finally looked up. "Explain." "They needed confirmation," the lieutenant said. "That you still have something to lose." The words settled heavily in the room. Jean Ho replayed the parking lot. The whisper. The withdrawal. The urgency in his own response. He had moved quickly. Personally. Not strategically. That alone was signal enough. "They engineered the custody threat," the lieutenant concluded. "Not to take her child. To see if you would react." Jean Ho's voice lowered. "And I did." The realization was sharp. Clean. Surgical. She had not been random. Not an accident on a sidewalk. Not coincidence under a streetlight. She had been placed within reach of his attention. Or perhaps simply identified as ideal leverage once she crossed his path. It didn't matter which came first. What mattered was the result. His rivals now had confirmation. He could feel. Across town, she sensed the change before she understood it. 2 unfamiliar cars had been parked near her building for 3 days. Not police. Not obvious. Just present. At the diner, customers lingered longer than usual. One man asked too many casual questions about her schedule. Her children mentioned a nice man, who offered them candy outside school before a teacher intervened. Her chest tightened when they told her. That wasn't random either. She drove straight to the restaurant that night without calling first. He was already in a meeting when she arrived. Raised voices. Korean spoken faster than usual. The door opened abruptly. His lieutenant met her gaze and hesitated before letting her through. Jean Ho stood at the head of a long table. His expression was controlled, but tension hummed beneath it. "We need to talk," she said. The room cleared without argument. When they were alone, she didn't soften her voice. "Someone approached my kids." His posture stiffened instantly. "Describe him." She did. Jean Ho listened without interrupting. When she finished, the silence felt dangerous. "It's connected, isn't it?" she pressed. He didn't deny it. That was answer enough. "You told me you protected us," she said. "I am." "From what?" He held her gaze. For a moment he seemed to weigh how much truth she could carry. Then he chose. "You were a test." The words landed harder than she expected. "What?" "My rivals needed confirmation," he continued evenly. "That I would act for you." Her mind reeled backward. The custody filing. The funded lawyer. The sudden escalation. "They funded him," she whispered. Jean Ho nodded once. "They wanted to see if you mattered." Her stomach dropped. "And now? Now they know you do." The room felt smaller. Colder. "So I wasn't just someone you helped." His voice lowered slightly. "You were the trigger." She stepped back as if physically struck. "You said nothing around powerful men is random," she murmured. "This was no longer gratitude," he replied quietly. "It was vulnerability." The truth rearranged everything. The repairs. The intervention. The whisper in the parking lot. None of it existed in isolation. It was all signal. And she had amplified it simply by being human. "What does that mean?" she asked carefully. "It means," he said, choosing precision over comfort, "they believe you influence me." She shook her head immediately. "I don't." "They don't need proof," he replied. They need perception. That was worse. Perception creates narrative. Narrative creates targets. So what now? She asked. His answer came without hesitation. They escalate. Her pulse quickened. Against you. He met her eyes fully. Against you. The weight of it settled in. She had given away $20 under a streetlight. And in doing so, she had stepped into a war she did not understand. Is there a way out? She asked quietly. He didn't respond immediately. That pause felt like a cliff edge. Distance can signal weakness, he finally said. Closeness can signal leverage. Neither option sounded safe. So I'm a liability, she said flatly. You are exposure, he corrected. That word felt colder, more precise. And you, she challenged. I am the reason you are visible. Silence stretched again. She studied his face, searching for something that looked like regret. She didn't find it. What she found was calculation layered over something deeper he would never name. The rival syndicate had what they needed now. Confirmation that Jean Ho Park could feel. Confirmation that his decisions could be influenced by something other than profit or power. And in his world that was blood in the water. Is she safer near him or marked because of him? He didn't waste time pretending the situation was smaller than it was. The next night she was escorted through a private entrance, past the dining floor, up an elevator that required a code she did not know. Inside his office, the city lights stretched below like a silent witness. He stood near the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled with deliberate calm. We don't have much time before they escalate, he said. No greeting, no softness, just strategy. She folded her arms, refusing to look intimidated by the skyline or the silence. Then say what you need to say. He turned toward her fully. I can move you tonight. The words were delivered as fact, not persuasion. New identity, new city, different country if necessary. Your children enrolled under new records. Financial security guaranteed. Her breath caught despite herself. Disappear. Yes. And you. He held her gaze evenly. I remain. She studied him carefully. So I become the ghost. You become unreachable. Sounded safe. Sounded controlled. Sounded like surrender. She shook her head slowly. No, the refusal came without hesitation. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but recalibration. You don't understand the scale. I understand enough, she replied. If I disappear, they win. He had not expected that answer. They confirm you are weak, she continued. They confirm I matter. Silence filled the space between them. You think this is about pride? He asked. It's about power, she countered. And power runs on perception. His gaze sharpened. She had been listening. If I'm the weakness, she said carefully, then stop treating me like one. He watched her closely now, assessing not vulnerability but resolve. Explain. Her pulse quickened but she kept her voice steady. Don't hide me. Use me. The room felt charged. Publicly, she clarified. If they think I control you, show them something different. He didn't interrupt. Visibility can change narrative, she continued. If I'm visible by choice, not by secrecy, then I'm not leverage. I'm alignment. His jaw tightened subtly. Alignment suggests permanence. So. He stepped closer, not aggressively, just enough to shift the air. You understand what that implies. She did. Public association in his world was not casual. It was territorial, strategic, dangerous. Visibility can be armor, she said quietly. Or a target. He studied her for a long moment. You are asking to stand beside me. I'm asking not to run. A faint exhale escaped him. Not quite admiration. Not quite concern. Something between. There will be no retreat after this, he warned. I know. The decision settled in the room like something heavy and irreversible. Then we do it correctly, he said at last. The plan unfolded quickly. A charity gala 2 nights later. Media invited. Business leaders present. Rivals observing from distance. She would arrive at his side. No secrecy. No hiding. Photographed. Documented. Claimed. The night of the event, she stood in a dress she could never have afforded, watching cameras flash as he stepped out of the car and extended his hand to her. The gesture was deliberate. Calculated. She took it anyway. Inside the venue, eyes followed them relentlessly. Whispers traveled faster than music. She felt the weight of perception settling over her shoulders. He did not release her hand until they reached the center of the room. When he did, it was slow, controlled. Ownership disguised as elegance. Cameras captured everything. A senior figure from a rival group watched from across the room, expression unreadable. The message had been delivered. She was not hidden. She was visible. By choice. Later that night, a photo surfaced online before the event had even ended. Headline simple. Jean Ho Park appears publicly with unknown woman. Within hours her name followed. Then her employment history. Then her children's school district. Information moved fast once released. He watched the screen carefully as the article spread. It begins, he said quietly. Her stomach tightened as comments accumulated beneath the image. Speculation. Assumptions. Accusations. Allies recalculating. Enemies observing. She looked at him. Is it working? He didn't answer immediately. That hesitation carried weight. For now, he said. They will adjust. To what? She asked. His gaze shifted back to the skyline. To see if the armor cracks. She exhaled slowly. The photo had already traveled beyond the city. Beyond control. The perception had shifted. She was no longer invisible. She was positioned. Publicly. Strategically. Permanently. What happens when enemies test the armor? The meeting was called without announcement. No phones. No assistants. Just 12 men seated around a long table polished to a dark shine. The air carried the faint scent of expensive tobacco and restrained hostility. She was not present, but her absence felt like a shadow at the center of the room. Jean Ho stood at the head of the table, hands resting lightly on the wood, expression unreadable. Screens along the wall displayed financial reports, shipment routes, media reactions to the gala photo. No one mentioned her name at first. They didn't have to. It lingered anyway. Finally, the senior captain cleared his throat. Older Kong. Old guard. Scar along his cheek earned long before Jean Ho rose to power. Public exposure was unnecessary, Kong said evenly. Visibility invites weakness. Jean Ho did not respond immediately. He allowed the silence to stretch, measuring tone rather than words. Kong continued. The rival syndicate wanted confirmation. You gave it to them. A few heads nodded subtly around the table. Not openly. Not boldly. But enough. Clarify, Jean Ho said calmly. Kong leaned forward slightly. You moved for her in the parking lot. You silenced the custody attempt personally. You stood beside her publicly. You are reacting emotionally. The word landed deliberately. Emotionally. It did not belong in rooms like this. Jean Ho's gaze hardened just enough to register. Strategic positioning, he corrected. Kang's lips thinned. Strategic would have been removal. Distance. Silence. Was. Instead, you attached yourself. The room recalculated in real time. No one else spoke, but attention sharpened. He's risking the empire for a woman, Kong said plainly. The sentence fell heavy. Not shouted. Not dramatic. Just stated as fact. Jean Ho's fingers tightened slightly against the table. Be precise, he replied. I am controlling perception. Kong did not retreat. You are validating it. A subtle tension rippled outward. The younger captains avoided eye contact. The older ones watched closely. This was no longer about a photo. It was about authority. When power becomes personal, loyalty cracks, Kong added quietly. The orientation line did not need to be explained. It was a warning. Jin-ho stepped around the table slowly, not toward Kong, but into the center of the room. You believe I am compromised, he said evenly. Kong met his gaze without flinching. I believe your focus has shifted. A few chairs shifted subtly. Breath patterns changed. Focus, Jin-ho asked. Or evolution? Kang's voice cooled. Evolution weakens structure. The challenge was no longer implied. It was direct. Jin-ho's expression did not soften. You mistake restraint for weakness, he said. And perception for vulnerability. Kong rose from his chair. The movement was slow but intentional. Then remove her from visibility, he said. Prove discipline. The room held its breath. There it was. The fracture. Remove her. Distance himself. Reclaim unchallenged authority. A simple solution in theory. A brutal one in practice. Jin-ho's response came without hesitation. No, the single word cut through the room cleanly. Kang's eyes narrowed slightly. You place her above the structure. I place stability above insecurity, Jin-ho replied. Public association neutralizes leverage. Kong shook his head faintly. It inflames it. Silence. Then Jin-ho made the choice that shifted everything. Effective immediately, he said, voice calm and precise. You are relieved of oversight on strategic operations. The words did not rise. They did not need to. Chairs creaked. One captain looked down instantly. Another swallowed visibly. Kong remained standing, but the air around him changed. Authority does not evaporate loudly. It drains quietly. You remove me, Kong asked. I remove obstruction, Jin-ho corrected. You will retain advisory status. Nothing more. The humiliation was subtle but unmistakable. A demotion disguised as transition. Power shifting without spectacle. Kong studied him for a long moment. The loyalty in his expression cooled into something more complex. Not open rebellion. Not yet. But something fractured. Very well, Kong said at last, sitting down slowly. The meeting continued as if nothing seismic had just occurred. Financial briefings resumed. Logistics discussed. But every man in that room understood the recalibration. The empire had tilted. Personal loyalty had been prioritized over internal dissent. Emotion had entered the calculus, whether acknowledged or not. When the meeting adjourned, the captains exited in controlled silence. Kong lingered behind for half a second longer than necessary. His gaze flicked briefly toward the city skyline beyond the glass. Then toward the table where Jin-ho still stood. There was no overt defiance in his expression, just calculation. Outside the building, messages began moving through quieter channels. Subtle inquiries. Old alliances tested. Questions whispered in private rooms. Jin-ho had defended her publicly. Emotionally. Not strategically. And in doing so, he had forced the room to choose between loyalty to him and fear of his vulnerability. Fractures in empires rarely begin with explosions. They begin with silence. With wounded pride. With men who feel replaced. Somewhere in the city, someone had just decided that removing her might restore balance. Who just decided she must disappear? The lights went out at 9:17 p.m. No warning flicker. No gradual dim. Just darkness swallowing the hallway outside her apartment in one clean breath. Her daughter froze mid-sentence at the kitchen table. Her son looked toward the window instinctively. She moved without thinking, stepping between them and the glass. It's okay, she whispered, though her pulse had already begun to race. Outside the city still glowed. Only their building had gone black. Too precise. Too intentional. Her phone buzzed at the same moment. Unknown number. She didn't answer. The second vibration was a text. Stay away from the windows. The sender name did not appear, but she didn't need it to. Her stomach tightened. Get down, she said to her children, voice suddenly firm. Cracks split the air before they could move fully. The window behind her exploded inward. Glass sprayed across the floor like violent rain. The sound echoed sharp and disorienting. Her daughter screamed. Her son dropped flat instantly. She felt the rush of air before she understood what had happened. A bullet tore through the wall where her head had been seconds earlier. She dropped to the floor, covering her children with her body. Another crack. Another impact into plaster. Then silence. Heavy. Waiting. Tires screeched somewhere outside. Doors slammed. A step. Shouts in a language she did not know but recognized from his world. Within seconds, her apartment door burst open. Two men entered first, scanning, weapons drawn but lowered. Jin Ho stepped in behind them, face colder than she had ever seen it. He crossed the room quickly, kneeling beside her. "Are you hit?" She shook her head, breath uneven. "The kids. We're okay," her daughter whispered, trembling. Jin Ho's jaw tightened visibly. He stood and moved to the shattered window, looking down at the street below. One of his men approached. "Shooter apprehended," he reported quietly. "Alive." Jin Ho did not respond immediately. His gaze remained fixed downward. "Bring him," he said at last. They did not take her to a police station. They did not call authorities. Instead, within 20 minutes, she found herself inside a private warehouse space lit by cold industrial lights. Her children had been moved elsewhere under guard. She protested, but Jin Ho's tone left no room for negotiation. "They are secure." The shooter was dragged in, hands bound, blood trailing from a wound on his shoulder. He was young, younger than she expected. Fear had replaced bravado entirely. Jin Ho stood in front of him, silent. "Who sent you?" he asked calmly. The shooter hesitated. One of Jin Ho's men tightened his grip slightly. "Inside," the shooter gasped. Order came from inside. The room shifted. The word carried weight heavier than the gunshot. Jin Ho's expression did not change, but something behind his eyes hardened. "Name," he said. The shooter swallowed. "Kong." Silence detonated louder than any weapon. Older Kong. Senior captain. Demoted. Pride wounded. Authority reduced. The fracture now visible. She felt her pulse spike again. This wasn't external war. This was internal betrayal. Jin Ho gave no outward reaction. "You were instructed to kill her?" he asked. "Yes. Not me." The shooter shook his head weakly. "Just her. Message. Message. Clear. Remove the weakness. Restore balance." Jin Ho nodded once. "Very well." He turned toward his men. "Prepare the council." The execution did not happen in secret. It did not happen in shadow. Kong was brought in under guard within the hour. No struggle. No denial. His face was composed, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed understanding. The council gathered again around the same table as before. This time the atmosphere was not restrained. It was electric. "You ordered it," Jin Ho said evenly. "Not accusation. Confirmation." Kong did not flinch. "You chose her over structure." His tone held neither apology nor regret. Correction was required. A murmur rippled faintly around the table. Not defense. Not agreement. Just recognition of stakes. Jin Ho stepped closer. "You crossed a line." Kong met his gaze steadily. "You blurred it first." Silence. Then Jin Ho drew the weapon from his jacket with deliberate calm. No dramatic flourish. No raised voice. Just precision. He did not hesitate. The shot echoed sharp inside the room. Kong collapsed backward, chair toppling. Blood darkened the polished floor. No one moved. No one spoke. The message was clear. Some lines once crossed don't fade. Jin Ho lowered the weapon slowly. "Internal dissent ends tonight," he said quietly. "Anyone else who believes leverage restores order may stand now." No one stood. Fear replaced fracture. Loyalty restored by force. But something else shifted too. She watched from the edge of the room, pulse still uneven from the shattered glass hours earlier. He had protected her. Publicly. Permanently. But he had also executed a senior captain in front of his entire circle. For her. That kind of action did not vanish quietly. It reshaped hierarchy. It destabilized balance. It created enemies who would not show their faces immediately. As the body was removed and the room cleared, she realized something irreversible had happened. Protection had escalated into blood. There was no stepping back now. Did he just destabilize his own throne? Retaliation didn't arrive with explosions. It arrived with audits. Health inspectors closing restaurants tied to his network. Anonymous tips triggering police presence at warehouses that had operated undisturbed for years. Accounts frozen without explanation. Slow tightening. Strategic suffocation. News channels began circulating her photo from the gala again, this time with speculation layered in. Mystery woman linked to crime figure. Her name followed by the end of the day. Then her address district. Then blurred images of her children leaving school. She turned off the television, but the damage had already spread. At pickup the next afternoon, 2 reporters stood across the street pretending not to stare. One parent pulled her child away as she approached. Another whispered something sharp enough for her daughter to notice. "Mom, why are they looking at us?" she asked softly. Her throat tightened. "It's nothing," she lied. But it wasn't nothing. That night the school principal called requesting a meeting about safety concerns. The words felt heavier than they should have. Protection had drawn attention. Attention had drawn smoke. She drove to his office without calling. He was already aware. Screens displayed live feeds of raids across the city. Headlines flashing. Associates being questioned. "They're destabilizing," he said calmly as she entered. "They're using you," she shot back. He didn't deny it. "This is the cost of internal correction," he replied evenly. "You killed one of your own," she said quietly. "You think that ends quietly?" His gaze remained steady. "It ends decisively." "No," she countered. "It spreads." Her phone buzzed in her hand. A message from another parent. "Is everything okay? We saw the news." Her chest tightened. "My children are being questioned at school," she said. That shifted something in his expression. Not surprise. Calculation. "I will handle it." "You keep saying that." Her voice cracked despite her effort. "Handling it keeps making it bigger." Silence stretched between them. Then he reached for his phone. Spoke in Korean. Gave instructions she didn't fully understand. The call lasted less than 30 seconds. "It's done," he said. She felt dread instead of relief. "What did you do?" "Relocation." The word hit like a physical shove. "What?" "Your building is no longer secure. Your children's school is compromised. House is prepared. Staff vetted. Perimeter controlled." Her pulse spiked. "You don't get to decide that. I already have." The finality in his voice was unmistakable. "I'm not running again," she said. "This isn't running. It's reinforcement. It's exile," she shot back. "From my life." He stepped closer. "Your life is under threat." "Because of yours," she replied. That landed. Briefly. But he did not retreat. "Protection always leaves smoke," he said quietly. "You cannot demand safety without accepting consequence." "I didn't demand it," she whispered. "You imposed it." He didn't argue. 'Cause it was true. By the time she returned to her apartment that night, boxes were already waiting in the hallway. 2 security vehicles idled outside. Her children watched in confusion as unfamiliar men began moving belongings efficiently. "Mom, what's happening?" her son asked. She crouched in front of him, forcing calm into her voice. "We're going somewhere safer." "Why?" her daughter pressed. She couldn't answer that without unraveling everything. Within hours they were inside a gated property on the outskirts of the city. Clean lines. Surveillance cameras discreet but obvious. Guards stationed at the perimeter. Not a home chosen. Home assigned. She stood in the living room staring at the immaculate furniture. This isn't freedom, she said when he joined her. It's control. He didn't deny it. It's security. For who? She asked. He held her gaze steadily. For you. She shook her head slowly. You moved my children without asking me. There was no time. There's never time with you, she replied. Her phone buzzed again. Another news alert. Authorities investigating suspected retaliation linked to internal syndicate conflict. His name mentioned. Hers implied. There would be no quiet return to anonymity now. Her children were already inside his network. Protected. Guarded. Permanently. She understood something irreversible had happened. The moment she stood beside him publicly. The moment he executed Kong. The moment bullets shattered her window. Each action layered onto the next until retreat was no longer possible. Freedom had been replaced with structured safety. Choice replaced with perimeter. She looked at him across the room. The man who had shielded her from gunfire. The man who had just caged her entire world. You think this is love, she said quietly. He didn't answer immediately. This is survival, he replied at last. But survival built walls. And walls kept people in as much as they kept danger out. She stared toward the security monitors glowing softly in the corner. This was her life now. Protected. Guarded. Owned by circumstance she had never chosen. Can she love a man who cages everyone he saves? The raid slowed first. Then the headlines. Then the quiet calls that once buzzed through the night stopped altogether. One by one, the rival syndicate's fronts dissolved under pressure Jean Ho did not publicly claim. Counts shifted. Alliances recalibrated. A few strategic arrests landed exactly where they needed to. No more bullets shattered glass. No more cars idled outside the gates. War did not end with applause. It thinned until only silence remained. The council reconvened without Kang's chair. No one mentioned his name. Loyalty had settled into something colder, more cautious. Jean Ho stood at the head of the table with the same composure as always, but something in the room had shifted. He was obeyed, feared, calculated around, but no longer unquestioned. Stability had been restored. At a cost no one would list aloud. That evening he asked her to meet him there. Not in private. In the same room where blood had touched polished wood. She entered without escort this time. No guards shadowing her steps. The men at the table watched carefully as she took her place near the far end. No hostility. No warmth. Just evaluation. Jean Ho did not sit. He remained standing. The threat has stabilized, he said evenly. Our structure remains intact. No one argued. He turned slightly toward her. You are free to leave. The room shifted subtly. Not in noise. In focus. She felt it immediately. Explain, she said quietly. No guards, he replied. No surveillance. No relocation. No obligation. He reached into his jacket slowly and placed something small on the table in front of her. The 4 wrinkled $5 bills lay neatly folded beside it. No debt, he added. Her breath caught at the sight of them. The 20 that started everything. You can return to whatever life you choose, he continued. Your name will not be spoken here again. The council watched without blinking. This was not emotion. This was strategy. An exit offered publicly meant separation was permitted. Safety restored without attachment. She stared at the bills for a long moment. And my children, she asked. Protected, he said calmly. Without condition. That was the cleanest offer he had ever made her. No perimeter. No enforced safety. No invisible chains disguised as concern. She stood slowly. The chair legs scraped softly against the floor. The room remained silent as she walked toward the door. Each step felt heavier than the last. Freedom stood just beyond polished wood and controlled air. She reached the handle. Her reflection faint in the dark glass. The world beyond would not know the layers of this room, would not understand the trade that had taken place. She exhaled slowly, then turned back. The council noticed before he did. She walked toward him instead of away. "If I leave," she said evenly, "they still believe I matter." He did not interrupt. "If I stay," she continued, "I choose it." That distinction mattered more than anything. He studied her carefully. "Choice removes leverage," he said quietly. "Choice creates alignment," she replied. A faint shift moved through the room. She stepped closer. "You don't own me," she added softly. "And I don't belong to your empire." His jaw tightened slightly. "Then why stay?" She glanced at the 4 $5 bills. "Because I gave you something once without expecting return," she said. "And you gave up something for me you never had to." That was true. He had given up unchallenged control. The illusion of invulnerability. The comfort of isolation. He reached into his jacket again. This time his hand emerged holding a ring. Simple. Not ornate. A family ring passed down long before his empire existed. He did not kneel. He did not soften his expression. He turned to face the council fully. "Effective immediately," he said calmly. "She stands beside me." No flourish. No romance in his tone. Just declaration. He slid the ring onto her finger deliberately. The gesture was measured, strategic, permanent. The council understood instantly. This was not love displayed. This was alignment formalized, public, recorded, irreversible. She felt the weight settle against her skin. Not delicate, not symbolic, heavy, real. No applause followed. No smiles. Just acceptance. Jean Ho met her gaze briefly. Not possessive. Not triumphant. Something steadier. Something chosen. Silence returned, heavier than before. By morning the story had already spread. Not through tabloids. Through channels that mattered. She had not disappeared. She had not been removed. She had been placed. Deliberately. Permanently. She gave away her last $20 under a streetlight. He gave away the illusion of absolute control in a room built on fear. The city adjusted. Rivals recalculated. The council obeyed. And the narrative settled into place. In his world, perception becomes structure. Structure becomes reality. By morning, the world believed she belonged to him. And in his world, belief becomes law.